You're listening to the Visibly Fit Podcast. Hey, I'm your host, Wendie Pett, and every week I'll give you holistic, practical solutions for everyday issues related to nutrition, healing, functional fitness, and behavior modifications. As a naturopath, fitness expert, and wellness coach for over 20 years, my goal is to empower you to reach for greater health and to rise up to your next level of living in mind, body, and spirit. You were created with greatness in mind. It's time to own it. Are you with me? Then let's dive in.
F this and F that. That's right. What if you did F this and F that? That F word being the word forgive. So often we are in this F this and F that kind of frame of state of being, and it's the wrong F word we're using. What if we flip that around? We flip the script and we use the forgiveness word instead. It would change the trajectory of your life. Welcome to Visibly Fit. I'm your host, Wendie Pett. Being visibly fit is all about being fit, mind, body, and spirit. And we're going to tap in today a little bit about the mental and the spiritual aspect of being visibly fit. And I'm going to be very candid, authentic, raw, and real with you today. I am with every episode, but especially today, because I'm going to be sharing my story with you, part of my story. And I've shared it on some television shows and a few other places, but not to this caliber. And I'm really pushed. My spirit is pushing me to just go forward in this. And God is like, yeah, go for it. My husband's like, go for it. Yes, if it can bless one person, go for it. And so I'm really feeling compelled to share. So before I do, I wanted to read a devotional from my friend Kathleen Cook. The devotional is called Hope for Today. And it is a great devotional, by the way. And the name of this devotional is Cease the Blame Game. And she starts out with scripture verse, James 1:13-14. It says, when tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. The devotional says, God must hate me. Why did God do this? Have these thoughts ever crossed your mind? If so, remember that humans often blame God for things that he didn't cause. We live in a pass the blame culture, and no one is exempt. But the truth is, we all live in a fallen, sinful world, and we often choose not to resist sin. King David understood that we all have a sinful nature and willingly accepted his punishment. In 2 Samuel 24:24, he confessed that he was responsible and must pay the cost of his sin. I will not sacrifice to the Lord, my God, burnt offerings that cost me nothing. He wouldn't blame God for his own sin, knowing that he made the choice, and so he had to pay for them. James 4:7 says, submit yourselves then to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Know that Jesus will return one day to defeat the devil and restore the earth. Until then, we will fail, and we must bathe in God's grace and God's mercy. Jesus came to the earth to teach us how to navigate this messy world. So devour his word and pray ceaselessly. And cease the blame game. And remember that his forgiveness and mercy are everlasting. But sometimes you must suffer the consequences of your choices. So a couple of questions she says is, what have you blamed God or someone else for in your life? And I'm going to get to what I blamed it was on other people and God for in my own life. But it says, get over it by confessing it. So making it, bringing it to the light, which is very important. I think so often we keep our story or our sin, which is just missing the mark, right? Just stuffed. We stuff it with food. We stuff it with alcohol, drugs, shopping, pornography, social media, whatever it is. people tend to stuff their story as opposed to bringing the light on it, and then allowing really it not to have a hold on you any longer. And your story can actually help to bless somebody else and get them through their issues as well. But it says, be willing to pay for your mistakes and then watch God transform your situation. So, I wanted to start out with that because I think so often we think we're fine. Like, how many times have you talked to someone and say, how you doing? And the response is, I'm fine. And, they're just not fine. I used to, I don't know, be the queen of saying, oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. In fact, as I share a bit of my story here, I mean, I went to church, I was leading a Bible study. A person that is struggling, you don't always know it. And that's the interesting thing. So it's important to really be aware and be present with individuals and to really, I guess, see what they're saying when they're not even saying it, right? Because I know I was actually really good about wearing a mask behind, the true ways in which I was feeling. And I was just feeling not worthy, and I was feeling like damaged goods. And so I want to share this with you today. Again, it's a different type of episode, but I believe that sharing my, it's a tough story to hear, actually. I can talk about it and smile and even laugh about it now because I'm so far through it, and the breakthrough has been there. I've been delivered from all of it. And so it's hard for me to even see that person that I was, but that's the cool thing, is that God can restore and he can make all things new. And so I believe this to be true for you. If you are struggling in any way, and it may not be to the depth that I was struggling, but struggle doesn't have a face, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Anyone could be struggling and you may not realize it. Someone may be struggling with drugs and alcohol and you may not be aware of it. And that's one of the things that I had struggled with. In high school, I was raped, and I am not on that Me Too movement at all. But I remember I got drunk at a party and I was in the coat room, passed out on a bed, and I was just trying to get away from everybody. And I was raped. And so I went through many, many, many years just suppressing that reality and blaming myself for it, and having this anger and bitterness and resentment and all those things, but masking it with fun and happiness and positivity. And now I am a very positive, happy person. Don't get me wrong, but I didn't allow I didn't allow forgiveness to set in for a very long time. And I kept acting out in ways that were harmful. So it was really a place where I felt shame. Here I am in the health and wellness space, and I've got issues with alcohol. How is that possible? I went to a couple AA meetings and walked in and thought, nope, I don't belong here. I don't look like these people. Isn't that interesting, right? We have sometimes a preconceived notion of what that person struggling is supposed to look like. Because if you were to look at me, you might think, she's got it all together. Well, no, I have it a lot more together now than I ever used to. That's for sure, by the grace of God. But no, I struggled, and people didn't know it because I put on the happy face. And so I might be talking to you that is putting on that happy face and hiding behind what really isn't the truth. And so I just want to encourage you to shine a light on what's really going on in your life so that you can be free. It's not about the perpetrator. It's about you. Now, I have forgiven the perpetrator. I still know the person's name. I can recall it, but I have forgiven that perpetrator, and I have forgiven myself. And so there's some steps that we can take and that you can take to dive into that forgiveness piece. But I did. I felt like damaged goods, and for many, many years, and I made unhealthy choices. I didn't have respect for myself, my body, who I was, even though I was going to church, and I knew, I mean, I love the Lord, right? Like I knew that God loved me, but yet I didn't fully receive it because of the situation I was in and the damaged goods that I thought that I was. And so, I think about how many times people are struggling and we just aren't aware. Again, I was leading Bible study, and I would go off on binge kind of weekends, go out with friends, just having the time of my life, quote unquote, the time of my life, right? Dancing, partying, just having fun. And really what it was is I was in denial, and I didn't want to deal with I didn't want to do the work because I didn't understand what that work even looked like in order to forgive. And I didn't know that I had resentment, and I harbored anger and that kind of thing in my heart. I really didn't know it until it hit me like a ton of bricks. I literally came in, and I went through a divorce, first of all, and the drinking was a big culprit. It really was, when I go back and look. And I know that I drank out of just kind of resentment that my husband at the time moved me away from my family in Texas to Minnesota. And I just had all these hidden deep emotions that I didn't really realize I had. And so I just went out and had fun with friends, and I thought nothing's wrong with me. I'm not like hiding the flask and, hiding the bottle in the house. I don't have issues. And then, anyway, it just kept showing up in my life. And I believe that was one of the things that caused a wedge in my marriage. But after my husband and I were divorced, being a single mom for 8 years, it was tough. And when my son was little, we did this week on, week off kind of scenario. And when my son was with me, there was no drinking. I mean, I was content. I was happy. I had my son, and it was great. But when I didn't have my son, I felt just empty. I felt sad. I felt lonely. I had all these things that were going through my mind, and I just didn't know how to deal with it. And so I drank, I partied, and when I would get home, it was just so silent at my home. And it just felt, one day when I came home after an evening of being out, I shut the door behind me, and I remember that silence in the home. It was almost deafening. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle the silence. And so as I was going up the stairs to go to bed and pass out, basically, I just collapsed on the stairs. I could not get up the stairs, and I collapsed in tears, and I cried out to God. I was so exhausted and so depleted, and I was feeling like there was such a void in my heart, and it was so over and beyond just missing my son, right? It was more, and I knew that I couldn't do it on my own, and I felt just shame, and I felt discouraged and defeated, and a phony, a fraud, all those things. And so I remember crying out to God and just boo-hooing and wailing on my stairs, and just saying, God, help me. I can't do this on my own. And just remember that moment. I remember crawling up my stairs, and then crawled into bed. And then here's where you might want to turn off this podcast because it gets a little gross. So this was a little over. So this is, let's see, as I'm recording this, we are September 2021. This was about a little over 14 years ago, 14 and a few months ago. And I had my little puppy. And this show is almost, so my little puppy just passed away a couple weeks ago. And so I dedicate this podcast to God and my dog. And I think there is a beautiful and unique correlation, that the fact that dog is God spelled backwards, because man, dogs sure are, woman's best friend. They are they just have so many of the same characteristics that God does as far as being faithful and always there and loving and kind and as you know, a companion and best friend. Anyway, she just passed away 2 weeks ago, and it was just really devastating to me and my husband. And we were really grieving, and I mean, we still are, but it's a different level of grief already, um, by the grace of God. But I think just remembering how amazing she was and what a ministry dog she has been, not just to me, but to so many people, brings me joy. And I know that she is, oh my gosh, I'm going to cry about my dog, but I know it's about so much more, because her passing away triggered so much more grief than my husband and I even realized that we both needed to go through. And so it's interesting how things come up in our lives, and they're just triggers for us to have deeper healing through and through. And so mine would be grief and loss of a marriage, grief and loss of not having a family unit together, grief and loss of self-sabotaging and treating myself the way that I was treating myself all those years, all the things. But anyway, let me get back to the story. Okay, so I crawled up the stairs and crawled into bed. And remember, I said my dog's just a couple months old. And I threw a bunch of dog food on the floor. She had water, she had food, so she was fine. But for 3 days, I stayed in my bed. I didn't get up, maybe to go to the bathroom, but I didn't want to live. I just really wanted to go away. I felt that disgusting and that much in a deep, dark pit of depression. And I've never experienced that before, because remember, I said I'm usually happy-go-lucky and just life of the party, that kind of thing, right? But when you're dealing with anger and resentment and all of those things, then that is depression just waiting to happen. And I didn't really realize I had so much resentment and anger in my heart. And so God did, that's for sure. But as I laid in my bed for 3 days, I never let my sweet little Cody out. Remember, I did feed her and she did have water, but I never let her out. So imagine the piles of crap everywhere. Yeah, just imagine that, right? It's hard for me to even talk about in the sense of, wow, who was that person? It's so far removed from who I am today. But God knew that He knows my heart. He knows your heart, and He knew how to get my attention. I had also gotten sick in my bed from drinking so much, and that throw up was in my bed for 3 days. So I want you to imagine the stench, the disgusting place that I put myself in, because that's how I felt. I felt that low that I didn't even clean it up. I felt like I was in a place where I should be, in a place of crap, a place of throw up, just the darkest, grossest place you can imagine. It was like hell on earth. And I just wanted to end my life. And that was a very tough time. As I was sleeping in my bed, I very clearly heard a man's voice in my room. There was no man in my room, but I heard, "Get up." And I opened up one eye and I thought, there's got to be someone in here. And there was no one in my room. And so I thought I was just delirious. And I closed my eyes and thought I'd just go back to sleep and waste away. And hopefully God would just take me and wouldn't have to deal with this anymore. Then I heard the voice again, and it was louder and a lot more clear. And it was, "Get up." And at that point, I knew that it was the voice of God. And I hit the floor by my bed on my knees, and I cried out to Him. And oh my gosh, just talking about it just brings me back to how amazing God is and how much He loves me and how much He loves you. And I got on my knees and I repented, and I just said, "Forgive me, Lord. I am so sorry." And I just felt daughter, you've been forgiven. You just need to forgive yourself. And so that's where I was. And I got up off of my knees after just praising God and thanking him and turning my life around. At that very moment, I was cleaning up Cody's mess. And again, 3 days worth, if you can imagine, cleaning up that, cleaning up my bed, cleaning up all of that while singing praise songs to God. And I can't even explain it, but that's what happened. And so since then, my life has just been a complete different story. And now your story doesn't have to be that disgusting as far as being at the bottom of the barrel, but that's where I chose to be in order to hear God's voice and to have a turnaround in my life. See, we all make choices in life, and it's those choices that can lead us down a road of destruction. And when we think we are damaged goods, when we believe that lie, when it is such a lie, then we continue to treat ourselves as damaged goods. And God can't use us. God cannot fully bless us like he would like to. You're his son, you're his daughter. He wants to bless you abundantly, and you cannot receive his blessing. The blessing's already there, but you cannot receive the blessing unless there is forgiveness and purity in your heart and in your mind and in your soul. And so I was thinking about a little bit of an analogy. And my husband actually, when we were in Florida last year, he was doing some pruning of one of the palm trees. And I think it's called a robolini or something like that. Anyway, it has major thorns on it. And one of the thorns got wedged into his arm. And as he pulled that thorn out, he thought he got all of it, but he thought, you know what? It kind of feels like maybe a little bit of it snapped in my arm. And so he just disregarded it. He knew it was a little painful, a little sore, but he didn't think too much of it until recently, almost a year later. And his body has built up a defense mechanism, if you will, to protect from that wound. And so now he's got like a raised kind of cyst around that thorn that's in his forearm. And now he went to the doctor, and now he has to have surgery and to remove it. And so I think about how that impurity, that impure foreign object, the body tries to protect itself, right? Well, sin is a foreign object to the soul. And so when you are in a place of missing the mark, when you are not in alignment with God's will for your life, when you're not in alignment with caring for who you are and not knowing who you are in Christ, then that foreign object, that sin, that foreign object to your soul starts to cause agitation, and it starts to corrupt and poison the rest of you. And ultimately it creates a ripple effect to those around you. And so you kind of need to have surgery. You need to dive in. You need to dive in and allow God to reveal what that foreign object is, that resentment, that bitterness, that anger, the grief, whatever that is. Okay. And I know there's moments for all of those things in our life, but when we stay stuck in those emotions, it can harbor just your soul to become off track, and your body responds in the same way. Your body becomes in a diseased kind of state. And so I just want to encourage you by sharing this, crappy story, if I were to be so funny about it, because it's something that I look back on and I think, who is that? Who was that person? And yet I struggled for a long time and nobody knew, because I never, ever shared, because I thought that I have to do this on my own. No one needs to know my ugly side. No one needs to know this. I need to deal with this on my own. Well, guess what? It's where when we are weak, then God is strong. And so when you show your weakness, when you were fillet yourself open, so to speak, so that God can heal those wounds, and that you can remove those feelings or that unforgiveness in your heart by the root, then things are resolved. And then you can receive the full blessing that God has for you. I'm going to tell you right now that had I not done the work, I know for a fact that I wouldn't be blessed today with the husband that I have today. He is an amazing human being. And I know that I wouldn't have been ready. I wouldn't have been ready mentally, physically, spiritually for who God had for me at this point in my life. If we don't get out of our own way and heal those deep wounds, then God really can't use us. I would not be in the state I am with my business and with my ministry had I not allowed God to heal my heart through and through. So just know that you are not damaged goods. It's never too late. In fact, I work with women on this quite often in my Visibly Fit program, because it is more than just being physically fit. It's mind, body, spirit, emotionally. All of it is connected through and through. And, one of the things too, that I think a lot of people think is that forgiveness means that you have to reconcile with maybe the person that was the perpetrator in your life, but you don't have to reconcile a relationship. Really, forgiveness is for you, and it's for you and God. It's really what it's about. It's about you and God, about getting right with him so that you can get right in this world, and that you can rise up. And so when I think of get up, get up is used multiple times in the Bible. And I wanted to share this with you real quick because it's in Matthew 9. And I'm just going to read this really quick, but it's about Jesus, how he forgives and heals a paralyzed man. Jesus stepped into a boat, crossed over, and came to his own town. Some men brought to him a paralyzed man lying on a mat. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the man, "Take heart, son, your sins are forgiven." At this, some of the teachers of the law said to themselves, "This fellow is blaspheming." Knowing their thoughts, Jesus said, "Why do you entertain evil thoughts in your hearts? Which is easier, to say, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or to say, 'Get up and walk'? But I want you to know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins." So he said to the paralyzed man, "Get up, take your mat, and go home." Then the man got up and he went home. When the crowd saw this, they were filled with awe, and they praised God, who had given such authority to man. So I think about that. And sometimes you need people around you, like his friends. His friends had more faith about his healing than even he did. And so sometimes you need those people around you that are going to have faith and believe in your overcoming situation, or just your healing more than even you at that moment in time. And I had that in my life. And I'm going to share that quick too, because I met my best friend at National Religious Broadcasting. This was many, many years ago. I think it was around 16 years ago. So she didn't even know I was struggling at that point. But she invited me to speak at one of her conferences, and it was in Arkansas. And I was on stage with some spiritual giants that I just didn't feel worthy of being on stage with. I kept thinking, what am I doing up here? This feels so weird. But I know God was setting the stage. He was planting the seed, and he was allowing me to see what he already sees in me. So he was putting that into motion, and it was up to me to do the work. Now it was on my timing and his, of course, but my timing to finally decide and choose to receive God's healing, so that those blessings and that the vision could burst forth. But I was on stage with some spiritual giants, and one of those spiritual giants became my spiritual father. And I can't tell you enough how grateful I am to have incredible people in my life that kept speaking life into my life, because I was on a place of speaking death into my life, in my mind, not everyone knew that, because if you were to meet me, you would think I had great confidence and I didn't have a problem with where I was in the world. But let me tell you, the conscious mind, it contains the feelings and the memories and the wishes that we're aware of at any given moment. And usually it's like right then and there. And so we tend to, just either mask the unconscious reservoir of memories with other things. And that's what I did with alcohol, right? Because that allowed me to have fun and to forget about it and to be all those things. But eventually it catches up to you. And alcohol is a depressant. I mean, what in the world was I thinking? I wasn't. But, you don't realize at the time, you just want to numb the pain. And a lot of people do that with food. A lot of people do that with, just immersing themselves in movies or social media or whatever it is, in media in general. But I had a spiritual father that was able to speak life into me. So he actually just reminded me the other day, because I didn't even know, but he said, yeah, I remember you were slurring your words on the phone and I was talking with him. He felt like a safe place. He's in his 80s now, and I'm just so grateful that he had the courage to speak truth into my life, God's truth into my life, and to give me what I needed to hear at that moment in time. And he also spoke to me, get up, which was beautiful, because I had already heard that, from being in Bible study and leading Bible study. But then my spiritual father would tell me, get up, put on your big girl panties, as he would say, get up, get over it. And it was stuff that I really needed to hear. But then he would remind me of who I am in Christ, and that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, and that God knew me before the world was even created, and he chose me. And so I think about that for you. He chose you before the world was even created. He has a plan for your life and a purpose. And so it's up to you to fulfill that. And so no matter what hurt you've been through, no matter what someone else has done to your life, no matter what you've done to your own life, it's not too late to pivot and to just surrender and forgive and start to F this and F that once and for all. Forgive this and forgive that. That's right. So that's the episode today. And I know we've talked about forgiveness in one of the first five episodes of Visibly Fit, but I really wanted to share this one in particular because I think sharing our story, even if it's a story like mine, that it can open the doors for others that are listening to be healed from their own stuck point. And so that's my goal and my hope for you, is that you will be healed, and that you will open up the door to forgiveness. And again, knowing that you don't have to reconcile with the perpetrator or someone that has done you wrong, but you do get to forgive, because forgiveness frees up you, and it frees up a greater, more intimate relationship with you and the Lord. So I can't stress it enough that it's worth doing the work. And if you are looking for someone to help do the work alongside you, that's part of Visibly Fit. Feel free to go to wendiepett.com. And it is definitely a program that helps free you up mentally, get you on the trajectory of thinking in a healthy way, thinking in the way that, knowing that we have the mind of Christ. What does that mean? It means that we can just like Christ, take authority over our lives and start to speak life into our lives, and your life will change. It also, Visibly Fit is about being more spiritually secure and strong in your faith. And so that's really important, as well as taking care of your physical self, taking care of yourself with nutrition and exercise and all of those things, but also emotionally. How are you doing? How are you doing really? Has anyone asked you that lately? How are you doing really? Because if you're just going around saying, I'm fine, well, I think you might need to ask yourself that question today. How are you doing really? And be honest with yourself, and then get to the place of duking it out, right? Duke it out, have it out with God if you need to. Just have that raw, beautiful conversation and let him cleanse your heart. Let him come into your life and remind you really of the truth of who you are and whose you are, and you will be set free. All right. That's the end of today's session. I hope this blessed you. And if you are encouraged in any way, I'd love to hear your comments. And if you are looking for a place, a safe place to bust through and bust free of some stuck points that maybe you're in, go to wendiepett.com or go to getvisiblyfit.com and apply. And let's see if this is a good fit for you for the coaching, and get you in a place where it's time to get freed up, get you in a place where you are in a body of like-minded individuals that love you and would help support you and get you through to your next level of living. So, all right. Thanks so much for tuning in. Bless you. I love you. And hope you'll share this podcast with others, but stay tuned. We have a great episode next week, and you will want to hear from this doctor who talks all about inflammation, also known as fatflammation. All right. Take care. Blessings.
Well, that's a wrap for today's show. So thank you so much for tuning in. I love spending this time with you. To learn more and get more free resources, just head on over to wendiepett.com. And thank you in advance for sharing this episode and this podcast, following and subscribing not only to this podcast, but finding me on social media, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you are, I'm probably there too. Until next week and our next podcast time together, make it a visibly fit day.